وكفى والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس الشديد بسرعته إنما الشديد الذي يملك نفسه عند الغضب. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام الغضب يفسد الإيمان كما يفسد الصبر العسل. Respected listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the lecture number 4, I think, of the series. I think it's the last lecture. Is this the last lecture or last advertised lecture?
Next one more is two.
Or this 5 in total? Yeah.
Next week's the last one.
Next week's the last one, yeah? Are we going to do another one after that? Possibly. Okay. So this is the second to last lecture that's been advertised. And what we did was we discussed in the first lecture a little bit about Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh and his book Al-Arba'in fi Usul al-Din. And his book Al-Arba'in fi Usul al-Din, the 40 principles of religion, is actually a condensed version of his magnum opus Ihya al-Muddin, the revival of the Islamic sciences. And within the whole book, the 40 principles, there's a section in there known as Kitab al-Muhlaqat, the book regarding those things that annihilate and destroy a person's soul spiritually in front of Allah Almighty. And there's lots of things that can spiritually destroy a person. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, he talks about 10 things that he says are the ummahat, the root causes of what spiritually ruins a person. And the fourth or the third thing within that, so the first was gluttony, eating too much. And he said you eat too much, and then lots of other negative spiritual illnesses start creeping in. The second after that was the tongue, and we spoke about tongue and all the different. This is a very long, lengthy topic. A lot of things were discussed within that. And this is today, inshallah, it's a very short little topic. It's all about anger. In fact, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, he's dedicated only 3 pages. 3 pages here. But I'm going to quickly run through that. Now, I can see that there's a few new faces around here today. So what's the point of the 40 principles? What is the 10 muhlaqat? And I'll probably keep on going on about this topic over and over again. So Allah Almighty, He swears on 7 things within the Quran al-Kareem. Some of the ulama say He swears and takes an oath on 9 things. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ وَمَا طَلَاهَا. You know, He's on the sun and the moon, the skies and the earth, etc., etc. And then He takes an oath on 7 things. So we know when you take an oath on 7 things, you take an oath on 1 thing. What's coming after is going to be really important, yeah? But he takes an oath on 7 things. Some of the ulama, they introduce a bit of a grammatical discussion into the bahas when it comes to this ayat. And they say it's not 7 things, he's actually taken an oath on 9 things. And then what he says after that is very important. He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, that success indeed is for the person who purifies the soul, who purifies his heart, yeah? Because we know, sometimes we might have just confined religion to outward dress. It's important because the outward impacts the inward. We might have just condensed it to the rituals of religion, the salah or the zakat or the hajj. Or we might have confined religion to other things such as, you know, the festivals that we celebrate within our religion. Or we might confine it to, you know, the ritual. But what about the spiritual bit? What about the inside bit? What about the heart? Yeah, because these little illnesses, and when you look at the Quran and Hadith, time and again things pop out. Things pop out. A person who has an iota of pride inside him will not enter Jannah. Yeah, a person, you know, hasad, hatred, dislike. These are all the things, all the spiritual illnesses, one after the other. So the point of these few lectures isn't to make you an expert, because I'm not an expert, to make us experts into this, but to give us that realization and the understanding that this is also a part, and a very important part of religion, that we need to strive, work very hard to actually correct ourselves. Because at the end of the day, ultimately, let's be totally honest, you know, dunya is, you know, history is linear, yeah? There's a beginning, there's an end, yeah? Someone might say it's the Big Bang Theory, yeah? And the end, Allah Allah. But Allah Almighty in our religion, we say that Allah created the dunya and it's linear, yeah? And, you know, when it comes to humans, in the whole scheme of things, we just pop in for a little while and pop back out. Yeah? 60 years, 30 years. Did I mention this last week? I don't think I did. Yeah, 60 years, 30 years, 20 years, 25 years, maybe 100 years. Khalas, there might be somebody who might be graced with 120 years, 130 years maybe, I don't know. What's the highest, how old is the oldest person? I have no idea. But our time in the dunya, when you think about it, is for a fraction of the time. Yeah? But what do we spend our time doing? Yeah? I'm not saying don't give up dunya. Yeah? I'm not saying we need a bit of dunya. Because, you know, to do your worship, 116 years old. You need a bit of dunya just to keep you going till the end. It's like oxygen, food. You don't need to eat too much. You just need enough to keep you going. Yeah. But the dunya, a little bit of it is necessary. But we make dunya our complete purpose. But we're only in it for a short period of time. And within that short period of time, there's one thing that we run after, which spins, keeps spinning all the way through. So you know, history runs across like a linear. Yeah. But then, and we just zoom in and we zoom back out. It's like a battle royale, or what's the other one before it? The other game from PS2, PS4. I forgot what it's called. You zoom in and then you zoom back out. That's your dunya. Yeah, you're there for a short period, and there's something that spins around. It keeps spinning around. It's in your pocket, then it's in your pocket, then it's in his pocket, then it's in his pocket, and we make that our purpose. You know what that is? It's money, right? Our education system, our jobs, our careers, everything is geared towards trying to grab hold of that thing that's spinning around. You come in, you leave, that thing keeps spinning around. 1 minute it's in my pocket, the next is in the next guy's pocket. You walk into Tesco's, it's in the cashier, in the till there. Then it gets distributed. You know, he was there from before, he's going to remain afterwards. But us guys, we just come in for a short period of time, we back out. The only thing that comes in use, when you think about it, you know, when you distill it all, is, you know, with that money, if you deposit it in a special bank, not called NatWest or Barclays or Lloyds or Starlink or I don't know, there's all these new ones online now as well, yeah? Not all these general banks, but there's another bank, it's called the Bank of the Hereafter. So if you deposit in the Bank of the Hereafter, I'm not saying don't give me your money, yeah? But you spend it in some pious cause, yeah? Spend your money in some pious cause, that money is deposited for Allah Almighty. Allah says in a hadith, the Prophet says in a hadith that giving sadaqah and charity doesn't decrease your wealth, it increases it. It creates barakat inside it. That's what really matters. But at the end of the day, you know, Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayh, Imam Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi, all the four Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and Imam al-Shafi. He was from the Quraysh. He was actually born in Gaza. Yeah, he was a Ghazali originally. His Arabic was absolutely beautiful, and he spoke poetry. And if I remember a poem, I'm going to give you. You have to jog my mind if it's a bit rusty. But he said in a poem, "Inna lillahi ibadan futana taraku dunya wa khafu fitna nazaru fiha falamma alimu annaha laysat lil hayy watana ja'aluha lujjatan wattakhadhu salih al a'mali fiha sufuna." Very beautiful poem. But in there he's packed, you know, he's jam-packed with lots of beneficial information. He says, "Inna lillahi ibadan futana." Indeed, Allah Almighty has some slaves who are extremely intelligent. Yeah, tarakud dunya wa khaful fitna. They left the world. I'm not saying we have to give the world up, because we need a bit of dunya to keep us going. Even if you're poor, how are you going to do ibadat? You need to be free. Your mind needs to be free from all those things that preoccupy you. Yeah. So if you've got a bit of money trickling in, that's enough for your needs and your family's needs. Alhamdulillah, excellent. Then you can spend some time in doing some quality time with Allah Almighty. Yeah, everything has to be balanced. So, but these people, they left the dunya, and they were in the dunya. They probably had some dunya coming to them. They might be extremely rich, but the dunya and the love of the dunya didn't enter their hearts. وَخَافُوا الْفِتْنَةِ, and they feared fitna, tribulation, anything that tests a person's iman. The word fitna comes from, you know, it's test, you know, in your daily life, in my daily life, when we browse the internet, for example, classic, friends, events, you know, if you work, then Christmas parties, for example, yeah? Sometimes I have to go to a meeting in London, and they say, "Oh, Ismail, why don't you just come the night before? We'll all stay in a hotel, we'll go for a crawl," as they say, yeah? Not for me, not for me. But I just want to come in the morning and leave straight after the meeting. I don't need to spend extra time, I want to be at home with the kids and the family. But you know, these are all times of fitna, holiday time comes. So whether there's one private life in Preston or in Blackburn or in whichever town you're in, but when you go on holiday, then then all the shortcuts start kicking in. Yeah, there's one face for the public in the UK, and when you're on holiday, you're a party animal. خافوا الفتنة تركوا الدنيا وخافوا الفتنة. They feared the fitna. نظروا فيها فلما علموا. They looked at the world and they understood it. They were cognizant of exactly what it's about. And what did they recognize it to be? فلما علموا, when they realized أنها ليست للحي وطنا, that indeed it's not a place for the living to call a home. You can live here in the dunya, but you can't call it your home because your home isn't hereafter. Then he carries on and says, جعلوها لجة واتخذوا. They made it a big ocean. They consider it to be a massive ocean. When you see an ocean, you might go to Blackpool or Lytham St. Anne's, or I don't know. If you're in Yorkshire, you might go to Scarborough, yeah, Brighton or Bournemouth, or you might go to the Mediterranean in the summer, on the Turkish coast, wherever you go. You don't just jump into the ocean, yeah. You know it's there, but it has its dangers, yeah. You keep a distance from it. Ja'aluha lujjata, they consider it to be a lujja, a very deep, dark ocean. Wattakhadhu, but there's something that they created for them to glide through the ocean. وَاتَّخَذُوا صَالِحَ الْأَعْمَالِ فِيهَا. So they made pious actions, their little boats, to ride through it. Imam Maulana Rumi, many people might have heard about him. He lives in Konya. He used to live in Konya. A very great Sufi. If you ever get a chance to go to Turkey, if you go to Antalya, you can easily get to Konya. It's not far. You can get a car ride. You can even fly from Istanbul there. Beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. So Maulana Rumi, there's a lot of things said about him. And a lot of I remember going there in 2003, and he was on the hippie train in those days, nearly 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago this April. So I remember going there, he was on the hippie trail, proper on the hippie trail, people there drinking wine and, being on the Rumi trip, as they said. Long time. But now, when I went a couple of years ago, it's completely transformed. It feels like an Islamic city, and very Islamic. There's no pubs and bars near his mausoleum anymore. But we went there, and one of Rumi rahmatullah alayhi, he has a poem. I can't speak Persian, I don't know what the exact wording is, but he says that, be in the dunya like a ship. Be in the dunya like a ship. The ship glides through the dunya, through the ocean, but it doesn't let the water enter the ship. Likewise, we glide through the dunya, but we don't let the dunya enter us. We don't let the dunya come in. We don't make it our purpose, our complete purpose. Yeah? I'm not saying give up on what you're doing. I'm not saying don't have money coming in. A man needs a bit of money, a woman needs a bit of money, and needs a bit of independence. But don't make it your be all and end all and your purpose. Anyway, that's something I wanted to mention. I don't know, I got a bit sidetracked from the actual taqreer or the actual dars today. But the purpose of our lectures is to give you a taste of what the ulama of the heart, otherwise also known as the ulama of tazkiyah, purification. Another word they're known as mutasawwifin, the people of tasawwuf, and in common parlance, the people of Sufism talk about. And I'm not talking about the jumping jacks on YouTube. I'm talking about the authentic, correct types of Sufis, such as Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi. So the third lecture is all about anger. That anger ruins a person. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi says, "I'lam know anna al-ghadab shu'latun narin uqbisat min nar Allah al-munqadah." He says that anger is a flame from the kindled fire of Jahannam. Yeah, anger is a flame from the kindled fire of Jahannam. And the wording he uses it's straight from وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالَهُ وَعَدَّدَ يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ كَلَّا لَيُنبَذَنَّ فِي الْحُطَمَةِ. That's Humazah, isn't it? So he uses the same terminology from that. It's a beautiful verse, by the way. وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. I'll get sidetracked. Destruction to the person who وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. Humazah and Lumazah. He speaks badly, and he has a negative opinion about people. That's one of the tafsir. Humazah and Lumazah. Destruction to this person. Right? وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ الَّذِي جَمَعَ. What does he do? الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالَهُ عَدَّدَ. He gathers wealth and he counts his money. He's Mr. Scrooge. He gathers wealth And then the reason why the Mufassirin mentioned that this verse mentions Humaza and Lumaza, these two traits of the person who has lots of money and he's stingy and he counts his money, is that they incline towards being Humaza and Lumaza. They have a negative thought about other people, and they also speak, they're very, very fuhash in the way they speak. They speak badly, because this is their whole purpose. They think that their wealth is going to stay forever. Never. They shall be thrown in the hutama, the thing that crushes Jahannam. And it's a very moving little surah in the 30th juz. If you get a chance, look at the tafsir of it, it's very nice. Anyway, then he says, الَّذِي تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى الْفِرَى, which then gathers onto the heart. And then he says, وَمَنْ غَلَبَ عَلَيْهِ فَقَدْ نَزَعَ إِلَىٰ عَرَكِ الشَّيْطَانِ فَإِنُّ مَخْلُوقٌ مِنَ النَّارِ. He then interestingly mentions that the person overcome by anger, he loses his senses, doesn't he? We've seen them. He's inclined to the stock of shaitan. He's inclined towards the people of shaitan, who has been created from fire. So Imam Ghazali, he's mentioning the severity of anger. And then he says, وَقَصُّ شِدَّةِ الْغَضَبِ مِنَ الْمُحِمَّاتِ فِي الدِّينِ. To break a person's anger is one of the important aspects of one's religion. He doesn't say that a complete annihilation and removal of anger. Because anger, certain things, there's certain qualities and traits within us, they have to be there. Certain traits have to be there. Anger has to be there, but it has to be managed in the right way. And that's what Imam Ghazali is advocating. He's not advocating a complete removal. When we talked about the stomach, we didn't say that the saint is the person that completely doesn't eat anything. We said, no, he should eat, but moderation. Likewise, when it comes to anger, a little bit of anger has to be there, but it has to be channeled in the right way. It has to be utilized in the right thing, not the haram thing. And that's the point that he's going to make here further on. He says that the breaking of the severity of anger, not the removal of it, is important. Why? Because anger also serves a purpose. Right? And I'll come to that in a little while. He then mentions a number of hadith. Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ. He says that the strong man isn't the one who defeats another in combat. The strong man isn't the one who defeats the other in combat. He stretches, he's all, what's the word, henched up. He's not the guy that's henched up and he's able to defeat the other. He's not the strong man. إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. That he's the strong man is only that person who's able to control his anger, his nafs at the time of anger. He's the strong person. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام الغضب يفسد الإيمان كما يفسد الصبر والعسل. He says that the Prophet ﷺ said that anger ruins a person's iman, in the way the aloe plant, which is a bitter plant, can ruin honey. So honey is beautiful, tasty, very sweet. If you were to put aloe plant, or if it was to become polluted by that, the taste of it would be ruined. So the Prophet ﷺ said that a person's iman can be ruined by anger. And then he says, مَا غَضَبَ أَحَدٌ قَطُّ إِلَّا أَشْفَ عَلَى جَهَنَّمَ. A person doesn't become angry ever except that he's on the border, on the brink of Jahannam. And it's crazy what a person does when he's angry. You could build a family. You could have a loving family. You've got a house, a home. And in a few seconds, bit of anger, bit of misunderstanding, you lose your rag, as they say. Everything can be ruined in a few minutes. Everything a person spent creating that loving family unit, strong family unit. We can only create a strong Muslim community if every single family was to be strong, as a unit. But within a few seconds, a person could just ruin it, وَقَالَ رَجُلٌ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ أَيُّ شَيْءٍ أَشَدُّ. A person came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, what is worse? He said, غَضْبُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. He said, the worst thing is Allah Almighty's anger. قال فما يبعدني من غضب الله تعالى قال ألا تغضب. He said, what can keep me away from Allah's wrath? He says that you do not become angry yourself. You control the anger. وقال رجل صلى الله عليه وسلم مرني بعمل وأقلل. Tell me about something. Give me an action. A person came and says, give me an action, but tell me something that's very simple and very small. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم Prophet said, لا تغضب. Don't be angry. فعاد عليه مرارا. He then repeated it many times. Yeah. Or يقول لا تغضب, and he was saying لا تغضب, don't be angry. So then Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, he then mentions that كيف لا تعظم آفة الغضب وهو يحمل في الظاهر على الضرب والشتم وإطالة اللسان والباطل على الحقد والحسد وإضمار السوء والشماتة والعزم على إفشاء السر وحتك السر والفر بمصيبة المغضوب عليه والغم بمسرته وكل واحد من هذه الخبائث مهلكة. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, then he comes out with a rhetorical question, and he likes his rhetorical questions. He says, how can you not consider great the ailment and the illness, the spiritual illness of anger, when it has an outward and an inward aspect to it? So outwardly, when you become angry, it causes violence. The person becomes angry. Often they become violent. They'll curse, they'll lengthen the tongue, and they'll speak bad about the other person, and they'll say what they want to say. And words break. You know, they say that, what's the word? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt. Yeah, that's just to keep, make people feel nice. But the reality is words have an impact. Yeah. So outwardly it causes a person to become physical. It causes a person to say things which is inappropriate. But inwardly it also causes another thing. He says it causes internal jealousy, hiqd. When a person's angry, he gets it off his chest, he says what he wants. Person, he becomes angry, but they don't act on it physically. But then it festers inside. It festers. It troubles them. And it creates internal dislike for the other person, a sense of jealousy. They began harboring ill thoughts about the other person. They'll swear inside themselves against the other person. They'll want to find out about the other person something that embarrasses them, some skeletons in the cupboard, and they'll want to tabloidize it or put it on the newspapers, let the whole wide web know, everyone on social media know about it. They'll find happiness in the other person's difficulty, and they won't be pleased at their happiness. These are all destructive illnesses. So Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi says that it's a great thing, anger. Outwardly, it can have this impact. The person speaks profanity, he'll do lots of scheming, he might act physical, but on the other side, he'll also inwardly allow that hatred to fester in himself. One of the great sages of South Asia, Hakim al-Ummah, he says that don't think it's just outward bursts of rage that is anger. Yeah, sometimes we think that coming out with it, saying what we want to say, getting physical is anger, it's the outcome of anger. He says that the inward is just as disastrous. Some people might be prone to coming out physically, but then there's other people who might not be as physically strong, but they might do it inwardly. Yeah? The first lasts for a short time, but the inward bit, it carries on. It consumes a person. And then he says that when it comes to anger, Hakim al-Ummah, he says when it comes to anger, there's three stages. There's three stages. So this is something I picked up on in another book, reading around the subject. He says when it comes to anger, there are three stages. Hakim al-Ummah, the physician of the Ummah, mentions this. That was his title. He says number one is provocation. Yeah? Something happens, that's the provocation. Number two, the second stage is acting on it. Acting on the provocation. And number three is being provoked, but then not acting on it. But when the anger subsided, then he acts according to his senses and also according to Sharia, according to what Islam tells us. So there's three stages: provocation, acting on it, and number three is not acting on it, but using, after he's calmed down, then utilizing his intelligence, his senses, and also sacred Islamic law to guide what his actions are going to be. And I'm going to explain each one after the other. Number one, provocation. So this isn't something that's forbidden. If somebody comes to me and pulls my beard, yeah, or smacks my head, or smacks the hat off my head, or he parks his car real tight next to my car, yeah, that's a provocation. You're not in control of it. Yeah, they've done that. It's not you done it, right? And you get angry. You are going to get angry at that stage. The Sharia doesn't say that you shouldn't get angry. The Sharia doesn't say you can't get angry. It's a natural expression of a person's feelings when he's wronged at that time. A person becomes angry. It depends on what he does next. So you need to control it there, right? Now what do? Do you act on the impulse, on the provocation, or do you let it subside and then act in a measured way? Yeah? Does that make sense? So you become angry. And Islam doesn't say that a person should be calm completely all the time. It doesn't say that. You know, it's like when we mentioned food, for example. You can't annihilate hunger. Hunger has to be there. If hunger's not there, how are you going to eat? If you don't eat, how are you going to be strong? If you're not strong, how are you going to worship Allah Almighty? Yeah? So Islam doesn't say annihilate it. And you could even apply it to other things. Yeah? Attraction with the opposite gender. You can't annihilate it, but it has to be channeled in the right way, according to Sharia and according to senses. But you shouldn't act on the impulse. Otherwise that opens up a can of worms. Yeah? I hope that makes sense. Number 2, so the provocation. Number 2 is acting on the provocation. So experience shows that acting on passion is contrary to one's intellect. So when someone's provoked, you lose your sense, and you'll do something crazy. There's a lot of negativities associated with acting on the impulse at that point. A person might get pleasure, you know, he might whack the other person, he might say something, and for a few minutes, he'll actually get some sort of satisfaction. He might even kid himself to think I've got some satisfaction. But later on, he'll think to himself, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't have done what I did. Maybe I should have reacted and responded the way I did. He might be provoked, he might swear at someone, he might attack someone. The outcome is always going to be negative. He's going to feel guilty and terrible later on, yeah, or she. Acting on the anger is actually unnatural for a person. It's not something natural. It's not a natural way of doing things. And it's also contrary to Sharia. This is the point. A person has the choice to stop, slow down, take a step back, think. Yeah? That's what he needs to do. So he shouldn't act on it. That's the second bit. The third thing is, the third aspect of it is, you've been provoked, but then you don't act on it. Yeah? Rather, you act sensibly after a little while. The effect of the anger, yeah, is there. So someone's done something to me. I don't immediately respond. I step back a little bit. I'm upset at what's happened, but I'm not acting on the anger straight away. Then I do act on something. I do act on it according to my senses and my intellect and according to Sharia. The effects of the anger is still inside me, but it's measured and it's being controlled. Yeah? So you might, for example, somebody might do something to me. I get angry, I don't respond straight away. Then I say to Mahfuz, after I've calmed down, to an extent, and I have a stern word with Mahfuz. And I tell Mahfuz what I think. In a nice way, according to Sharia. I don't hit him, I don't insult him, I give him a way out. He's got an opportunity just to mend it up. End of story. Yeah? Now, but you don't, so you express your displeasure. You might adopt a tone of telling him off, but you're not severe like lightning or thunder. That's the words Hakim al-Umar mentions. And he says this is the right way to behave. It's according to a person's intellect, it's also according to Sharia. So Imam Hakim al-Umar, he mentions that when it comes to anger, we mentioned 3 stages. Number 1, the provocation. Number 2, acting on the spur of the moment in a way that's contrary to Sharia and contrary to senses. And the third thing is to not act straight away, but control yourself and then act on it according to Sharia and according to one's senses. He says that the second way of acting is reprehensible, but not the first and not the 3. To become angry is natural, you're going to get angry. But how do you respond to it? So number 1 is okay. If you get angry, you get angry. There's nothing you can do about it. But then what you do after that, when in terms of the response, that's number 2 isn't right, but number 3 is fine. It needs to be channeled the right way. Once anger comes, other illnesses stem from it. Anyway, so that's something I thought I'd just mention there. Now, when it comes to Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, he says That breaking anger is our section here. في كسر الغضب وقسمه عند الهجان. That when a person is provoked, breaking the anger and suppressing it when a person is provoked. How do you go about doing this? How do you go about controlling yourself? And it's a really beautiful way he mentions. He says, Imam Ghazali says there are two things to do when it comes to breaking one's anger, right? Number one, training it, and number two, controlling it. So you train your anger and you control it. And I'm going to explain both of them. Number one, how do you train it? How do you train your anger? So you train it, and the word he uses is riyadha. Riyadha means to train. He is quick to mention that by breaking it, he doesn't mean removing it. That's why Imam Ghazali is very particular. He's not telling you to remove anger. Anger has to be there. You can't remove it. It's part of your natural disposition. Yeah, you've got to control it. So you can't completely remove it. In fact, it isn't apt that it's completely removed. Imam Ghazali says this. He says you can't completely remove it. I've mentioned that before. So for example, sometimes if there's war, for example, anger needs to be there so that you can give a suitable response in defense, for example. And he likens it to a hunting dog. That a hunting dog, if anyone's seen a hunting dog, it's trained. It's trained by two things. Number one, it's intelligence or intellect. Yeah. So the person's nerves has to be trained by his intellect, and the second thing is he has to be trained by Shariat. And it comes into action when the intellect and the Sharia also command it to come into action. So it doesn't come into action beyond that. When it needs to become calm, the hunting dog, it becomes calm. So likewise, a person needs to be exactly like that. And he says that this can only be done through disciplining the self. Disciplining the self through a concept known as mujahada. Through a concept known as mujahada. And he says that when this happens, then a person becomes halim, forbearing. He has sabr and patience. And when this becomes his habit, then if a person angers another person, you might get upset, but you won't respond in the way you might have responded before, but you move away. Yeah. So you've got to train yourself. Now someone's going to say to me, Sheikh, how are you going to train yourself? The training yourself is something that I've always mentioned in all the lectures is, you've got to find some suhbah with a sheikh and go on some sort of dhikr program with a sheikh. Islah program, tarbiyah program, tasawwuf program, Sufi program, tazkiyah program that corrects you as an individual, corrects your heart and brings you back to the sense of qad aflaha man zakkaha, that success is for the person who purifies the heart. Yeah? So that's the first thing. The second thing is control the anger by swallowing it when provoked. So you swallow your anger when provoked. And there's two things to assist you in swallowing your anger. Number one is ilm, knowledge, and the second is amal, actions. So how do you swallow your anger when you become angry? Number one, there's a type of knowledge, something that you need to be mindful of. And the second thing is actually physically doing something that helps you control your anger. So he says, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi says, that when it comes to ilm, there's two things. So now you can one of you guys might want to make a chart and spell it all out, inshallah. So when it comes to ilm itself, there's two things you should keep in mind. Number one, understanding and changing one's perspective. Yeah, Imam Ghazali says one should realize that there's no reason for me to become angry except that I am objecting to things happening according to the wish of Allah Almighty and not according to my own wish. Yeah, and he describes this to be extreme ignorance. So for example, my car doesn't start up in the morning and I get angry and I get out and I smash the window or I kick the door or I come into the house and I start ranting and raving and checking the dishes, etc. Yeah, my car's not working, it's not working. Allah Almighty wanted it to not work. And when I respond like that, I'm actually objecting to what Allah Almighty wanted. Just let it be, sort it out in its own time. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to realize the opportunity for Allah Most High to be angry with the person is greater than his own anger. So someone does something bad to me, then you think to yourself, wait a second, I'm getting angry at Mahfuz because he stepped on my toe. I'm getting angry at Mahfuz because he did something to me which really upset me. But the reality is, who am I to get angry with Mahfuz? When Allah Almighty has fed me, He's given me water to drink, He's brought me up to be this fully grown person. But then at the same time, with all his ni'mah that he's given me, everything, from a young age to my age right now, the air that I breathe, the water that I drink, the food that I eat, all the opportunities and the life and the family and everything I've been given by him. But even then, I use his ni'mah to rebel against his ahkam and his rulings. Those things that Allah might be telling me to do, I'm not fulfilling in the right way. So that if there's anyone that's ready to be angry with me, it's Allah Almighty. Why should I be angry on X, Y, and Z when I should think about how Allah Almighty is tolerating me in spite of my transgressions? So when that's the situation, why should one become angry when another opposes him? His command over his slave, family, friends is greater than the command of Allah Almighty. So this is when it comes to knowledge. This is the knowledge that a person should have. Those things that a person should be mindful of when he becomes angry. But when it comes to amal, actions, there's certain things that a person can do. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions number one, he says ta'awuz, a person should do, say a'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. إذ يعلم أن ذلك من الشيطان فإن لم يسكن جلها. So he says that a person should do ta'awuz. Why? Because anger is actually from shaitan. Yeah? Anger is actually from shaitan. فإن لم يسكن, and if he doesn't calm down, جلس إن كان قائما, he should sit down if he's standing. Yeah? ويستجع إن كان قاعدا, and he should lie down if he's sitting. Yeah? كذلك ورد الخبر, and that likewise is mentioned in Sahih. The action is that you should change your posture. You should change your posture. Hakim ul-Ummah rahmatullah alayhi mentions, he mentions a very nice point here, which, just to give you, so someone might say, okay, I'm standing, I sit down. If I'm sitting down, I lie down. Why? Why are you changing posture? What is the wisdom behind this? What is the wisdom behind this? Anyone, any answers? I'm a bit tired of speaking. I need a glass of water. Any answers?
Is it to be in a more humble position?
Humble position. I think that's a good answer. Yeah. I think that's that. Any sisters? Anything? Any thoughts? Come on, give it a shot. Anyone? I'll tell you what he says. He says, when standing, then a person is at a distance from the earth. When standing, a person is at a distance from the earth. When sitting, he's closer to the earth. When lying down, he's even closer. The ground is naturally, what Brother Muhammad said, humble. The ground is humble. We step on the ground. We stomp on the ground. We walk on the ground. Yeah? We park our bottoms on the ground. Yeah? The ground is humble. And when a person becomes angry, what does he do? He's like a cat on his feet. Yeah? With his hair sticking out. He's ready. He's going to jump on the other person. That's a posture you adopt because you want to overbear the other person. But you need to bring yourself to something humble. Why? Because everything has an effect and an impact on a person. Yeah? So what Hakim Ulma says, that the ground is naturally humble. Its humbleness has an effect on the person. Whatever you wear, whatever you drink, whatever you eat, the people you hang around with, where you sit, how you sit, all of those things has an impact on a person. And the ground is naturally humble. So the ground, that's why, when you do sajda, the ground is humble. So the impact of the energy from the ground starts impacting you in the way you behave. And he calls this ilaj bid-dhid, curing something with the opposite. So, fire, you pour water on it. You've got that fire of anger inside you, you're actually correcting yourself with something humble. Ji Muhammad.
Is that reason linked to why we sit down to eat and sit down to pray?
Humbleness and sunnah. That's a sunnah. At the end of the day, we do all of this because Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this. But the wisdom behind it, sometimes we know what they are, sometimes we don't. But the slave, in his servitude to Allah Almighty, he does it. Why? Because Allah has commanded it, or Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded it. Yeah? Or this was his way, out of love for Allah Almighty and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The wisdoms, if they kick in and they don't kick in, or we don't know, it doesn't matter. We do it out of servitude to Allah Almighty. But yeah, that's one of the reasons. So when someone gets angry, his posture changes to, he's preparing to kick off. Usually he might lean on his right foot, sideways, left hand up, guard up. He's ready to kick off. But if you're sitting, then if sitting, and usually what happens is if you're sitting, you get angry, you'll stand up. If you're lying down, you'll sit up. And if you're standing up, you'll start jumping up. Yeah, that's what happens when you become angry. But you're supposed to do the complete opposite. So this is the second thing that he mentions. So the first was ta'awuz. The second thing is, in summary, changing one's posture, bringing yourself as close to the ground as possible. Sometimes some of the mashaykh say that if you become angry, then put your head on the ground. Put your head on the ground and keep it there. Go into sajda for a little while so that the anger is removed and he abates. The third thing he mentions is wudu. He says, وَإِن لَمْ يَسْكُنْ فَلْيَتَوَضَّى. If you don't calm down, then do wudu. Yeah? قال صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الغضب من الشيطان وإن الشيطان خلق من النار وإنما تطفأ النار بالماء فإذا غضب أحدكم فليتوضأ. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, indeed, anger is from shaitan. And the shaitan was created from fire. And fire can only be extinguished with water. Some clever person will come around and say, oh yeah, what about blankets and foam and all of them? It's a general rule, yeah? Fire and water. إِذَا غَضَبَ أَحَدُكُمْ. When a person becomes angry, when one of you become angry, فَلْيَتَوَضَّى. Then let him do wudu. Let him do wudu. Yeah? Do wudu in the right way. Go there. Roll the sleeves up. Yeah? Take your miswak. Focus on Allah Almighty. The ibadat of wudu. Facing qibla, ideally. Sitting down, ideally. Yeah? Washing your hands 3 times properly. Take your time. Wash your hands 3 times. Gargle. Slowly, you'll calm down, inshallah. So that's the third thing he mentions. Wudu. Urwa bin Muhammad rahmatullah alayhi, he was visited by Abu Wa'il rahmatullah alayhi. They had a conversation. This is great, two very great, I think they might have been tabi'in if I remember. They had a conversation and he upset the other. It might have been something. So they became angry. So Urwa bin Muhammad, he asked for some water and he performed wudu. He offered 2 rakats and he said, my father heard the Prophet ﷺ, my father heard the Prophet ﷺ say that anger is from Satan. And the Prophet ﷺ said that Satan has been created from fire. And see how that at the time of anger, then the effects of heat appear. The face turns red. Yeah? Heat. You have your heart starts pumping. Yeah? Your hands and face begin to shake. Yeah? Because of the anger. This is all because of the fire. Hakim al-Ummah mentions that Satan was asked, where do you live? He said, when man is happy, then in the heart, and when he becomes angry, then I sit on top of his head. Yeah, I sit on top of his head. So you bring your head to the ground, Shaitan gets knocked off, you could possibly say. The Prophet ﷺ was a complete and perfect Hakim. This is what Hakim al-Ummah says. Anger is from Satan, and then he explains, do wudu, to not just combat the heat through water and its cooling effect, but the effect of Satan himself. Right? So his kufr is based on pride, and the opposite of pride is worship. So this is another point that Imam Hakim al-Ummah mentions. He says that shaitan comes when a person is angry. And the basis of Satan and what he's all about is pride. Yeah? And worship and his kufr, Satan's kufr is based on pride. He didn't want to prostrate to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, as mentioned in the Quran. He said, خَلَقْتُهُ مِن طِينٍ وَخَلَقْتُهُ مِن نَارٍ. You created him from earth and you created me from fire. Therefore I'm greater. And then he did kufr. And because he did kufr, Allah Almighty threw him out from his from Jannah, but from also his close circle. And he was thrown into the dunya. So he said that his kufr is based on pride. And the opposite of pride, his pride is actual worship and servitude to Allah Almighty. So what Nabi Karim Sallallahu is actually doing here is, he's telling a person to do wudu. So you're actually stemming or extinguishing the effects of the heat from the fire. But at the same time, you're also curing the effects of Satan by doing an act of worship, the wudu itself, in order to draw close to Allah Almighty and push Satan away. And as an act of worship, one draws close to Allah Almighty and distances himself from shaitan. So that's the third thing. So ta'awudh, changing posture, and wudu. He also mentions another thing. He says, placing his face on the ground, which is already discussed. And you understand from the hadith that there's actually 3 cures Some of the mashayikh say there's 3 cures mentioned inside the hadith when it comes to anger. I'm going over time. But there's others that ulama mention, which a person could easily do at the same time. Number 1, aside from the 4 things that we mentioned, ta'awuz, changing posture, wudu, and placing his face on the ground. There's another few things that you could mention. I'm quickly going to run through them. Number 1, move away from the place. Just make it your principle. I'm going to move away from the place. I'm going to go and do wudu, and I'm going to put my head on the ground. Or I'm going to put my hand on the ground, and I'm going to do wudu. Yeah? And then another thing that some of the mashayikh mention is that when a person who often becomes angry, because some people, they have a tendency to become angry quite regular, including me, then let him write on a piece of paper and remind himself. And sometimes, I know people are reading like books, e-books nowadays, so it's different, but sometimes it's good to like write little notes in books, so when you read your books, or your favorite books, your Quran, or your dua kitab, or something like that, you come across this thing as a reminder. But let him write on the paper, Allah has more power over you than you have over them. Allah has more power over you than you have over them. Or you might want to stick it on your mirror, for example, or maybe put it as a message on your tablet or on your phone. So every time you open your phone, it pops up and you can see it. Now, people become angry and then act on their anger when the other person. This is the point I want to make. That people become angry and then they act on their anger when they perceive the other person to be weak. Yeah. But if the other side doesn't seem tough or does seem tough, the response is going to be, "You get angry with me, is it?" Yeah. Then they don't act. They don't get angry. So they're selective in who they get angry with. Yeah. So he says, Hakim Ulma, he gives an example in India. He says that there was an elephant and he went wild. Yeah, there was an elephant who went wild, and he's going around in the village and jumping around and breaking things, completely out of control. Very angry elephant, and he says that. People decided that they'll shoot it and kill it now because they just can't control it. Yeah, but it's a commodity. It costs money. It serves a purpose. And they were like thinking, right, we're just gonna have to kill it. We're gonna lose so many rupees, for example. So then they went to an very old, wizened, wise elephant handler, and they said, "Oh, we've got this problem." I said, "Oh, it's very, very easy. It's very easy to sort it out. It's all you need to do is get a paper tiger. Yeah? Get a paper tiger or a paper lion. So a cardboard lion, a cutout. Yeah? A cutout of a cardboard lion. And put it at a distance so it sees it. And then see what it does." And they did exactly that. The elephant didn't realize that it's actually, so they got an artist to draw a tiger. They placed the tiger at a distance in a cardboard cutout. And they put it there. And they watched the elephant. As soon as the elephant saw it, it became quiet. It became completely quiet. So what Hakim Ulma says, he says, and it reminds me of, I don't know, you guys might be young, but about 20 years ago, the police in this country on the M6 and the M61, on the M62 and the M60, on overhead bridges, yeah, they used to put cardboard cutouts of police cars. I don't know how. I remember this a few years ago. This is before like cameras and stuff like that. And you see at a distance, you don't realize this. You think it's actually a police car, yeah. So you slow down. But it's actually a cardboard cutout, yeah. they actually rolled this out. So what Hakim Ulma says, that the presence of mind regarding Allah Almighty will prevent him. So by just having that thought that Allah Almighty has greater power over me than them, that will prevent them. So it's just like the cardboard cutout. And then you ponder, the person you're getting angry at will one day become greater than you, and then what? What will your situation actually be? And then Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi mentions a couple of hadiths. And I'll quickly go over them. Allah innal ghadaba jamratun fi qalbi ibn Adam. That be attentive, indeed anger is a hot coal in the heart of the son of Adam. Allah tarawna ila hamrati aynayhi wa infitikhati awdaji. Do you not see the redness of his eyes and the bulging of his veins? فَمَنْ وَجَدَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ شَيْئًا فَلْيَلْسَ خَدَّهُ بِالْأَرْضِ. A person who comes across a situation when he becomes angry, let him attach his cheeks to the ground. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "Inna rajula liyudriku bil hilmi darajat al qa'ib as-saim." That a person who's patient, who has forbearance, who has sabr, he can reach the level of the person who spends the entire night in ibadat and the entire day in fasting in ibadat by controlling his anger. وَإِنَّهُ لَيَكْتُبُ جَبَّارًا وَمَا يَمْلِكُ إِلَّا أَهْلَ بَيْتِهِ. And it's written in the eyes of Allah Almighty that this person is Jabbar, a great mighty person, even though the only thing وَمَا يَمْلِكُ إِلَّا أَهْلَ بَيْتِهِ, the only thing that he has actual control over is probably his wife and his kids and his family. As in control, as in like he has influence over them as a person of prestige who might listen to him and they come to some sort of agreement, etc. So, but he's written in the eyes of Allah, Jabbar, and a great mighty person. Nabi Karim says, Man kadama qaydan walau sha'a an yamdiyahu amdahu mala Allah ta'ala qalbahu yawm al-qiyamah amanan wa imanan. He said the person who swallows his anger, walau sha'a an yamdiyahu amdahu, and if he wants to, he could fulfill and act according to his anger and do what he wants to do at that point in time. Mala Allah ta'ala qalbahu, Allah Almighty shall fill his heart on the day of judgment with peace and iman. I mean, what greater thing can there be beyond that? Allah give me the tawfiq. Ma min jur'atin ahabba ila Allah ta'ala min jur'ati ghaylin yakduma abdun. That there is nothing that a person swallows. Now most of that person swallows that is more beloved to Allah Almighty than the swallowing of his anger that a slave swallows. وَمَا كَذَمَ عَبْدٌ إِلَّا مَلَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى قَلْبُ إِيمَانًا. And a person doesn't swallow his anger except that Allah Almighty fills his heart with iman. And when you look inside the stories of the pious predecessors, there's lots of incidents. Am I going over a few minutes? There's a number of stories of people who actually showed and demonstrated the swallowing of their anger at times of difficulties. Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his slave came with a hot plate of broth and he spilt it on him. He didn't say anything, but he looked at him sternly. Yeah. And the person said, he recited the verse of the Quran, وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, those that swallow the anger. So immediately Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says, قَضَمْتُ قَيْدِي, I've swallowed my anger. Yeah. And then he said, and the next bit of the verse is, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, those people, he's talking about the pious people in the eyes of Allah Almighty, referencing a verse of the Quran, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, those that forgive people. He says, عَفَوْتُ عَنْكَ, I say I've forgiven you. And then the third thing he says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and Allah Almighty loves the do-gooders, or the person who do good and righteous deeds. He says, أَتَّقْتُ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, I have released you and I have emancipated you for the sake of Allah Almighty. One of the great sheikhs in India, he was lecturing inside the Jami Masjid of Delhi. Yeah, have you been there? Yeah, one of my dreams to go there, inshallah, one day. So he was lecturing inside the Jami Masjid of Delhi, and this individual had lots of followers. Somebody didn't like him inside the lecture theatre in the masjid, and he asked him a question, and the question he asked him in front of everyone was this. He said, I heard that he said that I heard that I have a question for you. In the question answer, he said, yes, ask your question. He said, I heard that you're an illegitimate child. You're an illegitimate child. He wanted to disgrace him. So the sheikh, he turned around and very casually he calmed the entire community, the congregation. Because the congregation, look, if he said grab him, they would have grabbed him straight away. But he turned around and he said, actually my mother and father married in such a year, in such a village, and the people who witnessed the nikah, and the sheikh who carried out the nikah is still alive, and if you want I can give you their names, you can go and check it with them. Everyone started laughing at the person. So at this time when he could have easily become angry and inflamed the situation against this person, he stayed completely calm. Likewise, Imam Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, he was lecturing when a person who disliked him, he came and he said to him, Imam Abu Hanifa, I have a question for you. He said, yes. He said, I understand that your mother is very beautiful. He stayed quiet. Then he said, why don't you marry her to me? So Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, being a faqih and a jurist and a person of fiqh and a person very well versed with the sacred Islamic law, he said he didn't inflame the situation, he didn't respond, but he gave a response that's befitting a person who understands the Islamic law. He says, well, actually, for me to marry you to her, I actually need to ask her permission because she's an adult. Yeah, I need to ask her permission. And he said, why don't you wait till I go and ask her my permission? He got up. Some of the stories mentioned that when he got up, sometimes the awliya of Allah Almighty, the walis, the pious people, you don't upset them. Because sometimes they might not take retribution, but then Allah Almighty could take retribution on their behalf. He says that when he got up and he started walking away, the person passed away. He died straight away. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi then said that my patience, he died and my patience killed him. He died but my patience killed him. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Any questions, brothers, sisters?
As Muslims, how can we maintain emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence. What do you define emotional intelligence as? So the question is, I don't know if everyone can hear, but the question is, how do we as Muslims maintain emotional intelligence? How do you define emotional intelligence?
Being able to show the right emotion for the situation that you're in. So if someone's getting told off, then showing empathy maybe, or being stern, these kind of things.
I think so. I think emotional intelligence is one of those things that's bestowed by Allah Almighty. Yeah, person has it, doesn't have it, or they have it at different levels. Yeah, and I suppose as individuals, some people just don't have it, just don't get it. And if you don't get it, that's from Allah Almighty. Just let it be. But as individuals, one thing that we can do is be conscious about everything around us and how other people think. Yeah, and I think that goes back to Tazkiyatul Qulub as well, to an extent. But that doesn't mean that a person can be extremely purified, but he might just not understand certain things. And certain things are actually cultural as well. So the way we think about things in the UK as British Muslims, our relatives back home might just not understand things in the right context, in the way we understand things. So they might be cultural as well. But khair, at the end of the day, there's certain things that we need to do, and which is completely obligatory. One is the Sharia, in both its aspects. The outer, in terms of the actions that a person needs to do, and the inner side, removal of the negative traits and bringing in the positive traits, and being on that journey. Because we're coming to an end here. I think there's one more lecture, maybe 2 lectures, depending on what Mahfouz says. One more advertised lecture, maybe another one we might just slip in Ramadan, just at the beginning. Maybe we might do something around fasting around then. But the fact is that when it comes to purifying the self, there's a journey that person needs to take. Every single individual needs to take that journey, sooner or later. And we all need to realize that at the end of the day, Allah Almighty, inna lillahi ibadan futana, tarakud dunya wa khawful fitana. That point that I mentioned earlier. We do need to tread that path. So I hope that answers it. I'm not sure if I've answered it. Any other questions? Sisters, any questions? Feel free to ask. Absolutely ask. Don't worry about it. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.